All right. Whenever, you ready, Robin?
Yep.
Okay. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Milton Planning Commission to order. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I'm George Ragsdale. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council. I'd like to introduce to my left Commissioner Fred Edwards, Commissioner Paul, excuse me, Moore. No. Paul Moore, Commissioner Jennifer Fletcher, Commissioner Chris Doty, Commissioner Curtis Mills, and Commissioner Joe Kramer. Since you're the only one that's here tonight, and do you have any public comment that you would like to make on anything, or are you just here to listen?
I have a very brief public comment.
Okay.
Is it specific on the gas station?
Well, it's about, the buffer.
Yeah, I think she wants to talk about the.
Well,
ordinance
then I need to
change.
go through everything. That's why I wanted to find out. Last time you were just here to observe, and so I got to go through all this.
That was somebody else.
Sorry?
That was somebody else observing.
Oh, it was? Yeah, okay. There's only one person here
Right,
observing. Anyway, I'm not going to dispense with it. The applications will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. I need to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures for conducting a meeting. The applicant, there is none in this case, and anybody speaking in support of an application will be allowed 10 minutes. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. The proofs on the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks. The staff in the Community Development Department will be keeping track of time, and we'll let you know if your time is running out. You do need to fill out a speaker card before, and they're over on the counter, the yellow cards. You do need to fill out a speaker card before you speak, and leave it with Robin. When you approach the mic, identify yourself by name, give us your address, and if you represent any organization, let us know what you represent before you begin speaking. If you are opposing, well, we don't really have a rezoning action, so I'm going to skip over that part.
Line up in a single file when you get ready to speak, please.
I think that's adequate. We've covered everything we need to cover, I think, with respect to what's on the agenda tonight, since there aren't any specific zoning cases. So with that in mind, you're here to speak on the one matter, so if there is no public comment, I'd like to motion to close public comment. Please.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next item is the approval of the minutes from the July 27th meeting, which were distributed. Are there any corrections, questions, or changes to those minutes? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
From one of the three that were here.
Yeah. So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I'm abstaining, I wasn't here.
Three abstentions, Paul, Chris, and Curtis abstaining. Okay, Robin, if you would sound the first item, please.
Okay, the first item is RZ 10-04 to amend the City of Milton zoning ordinance to create a required distance for convenience stores and service stations for residential uses / zoning districts within the Northwest Fulton Overlay and State Route 9 Overlay Districts, Chapter 64, Division 5, and Chapter 64, Division 6. In your packet, we did have a memo. I don't know if you want me to go through it or just open it up for questions, or if you all need any explanation. We also have a map, one of the first maps up. How would you like to do it? They're probably there.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you
You're
guys-
pulling up these maps?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, you're talking about the memo that was
Right,
written to
exactly,
council?
attached. Well, it was actually to you, the City of Milton.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I referenced council.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to read it.
Okay, that's fine, so
Do
we're,
you want to deal with questions about the memo before we get into the actual
Sure.
proposed changes?
yeah.
Assuming everybody's had a chance to read the memo, are there any questions about it? I have a few. First point, Lynn, that you make in your memo, I don't know whether it was intentional, but you put it in quotes.
That was that was quoted straight from the Granicus as to what was being requested of us to look at.
Well, since it's a quote, it wasn't more than one, so which city council member did that quote from?
I believe it was Mr. Longoria. Is
Okay.
that correct?
Wait, I think it was.
I think it was Mr. Longoria.
Okay.
Joe and Alan are always confused with each other.
Yeah, they look so much alike.
Right. Twins, the Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I will say that they both
Agreed.
were interested in this particular amendment, so yeah.
All of the references that you put in there with required setbacks, is it a fair assumption that they all are referring to something like fuel stations, service stations, gas pumps, because not all of them mention that.
Yes, this was the closest apples to apples comparison that we could get. And of course, the setbacks are from districts that would include fuel storage.
Okay. Do those districts include fuel storage as a permitted use or conditional use or
Excuse me.
what?
They would be a permitted use in each of the other jurisdictions. Now, Cherokee County, as you notice, has got specifically in the Highway 92 ordinance, so that's kind of a little bit like our other overlay ordinances. That's similar, except that theirs does include a reference to different uses, one of which is fuel stations.
And I was just going to add too, most of these distances were measured from a building or the pumps, whereas ours isn't doing that. We're going from
Property line.
property line to property line.
Okay. One of the questions this raised for me, we've defined convenience stores by definition to include fuel service. What if somebody came forward with a store, let's say it's the one we just talked about, that doesn't have fuel service? What do we call that?
It would be similar to a retail store. In fact, it would be like a local grocery.
Okay. So we don't need to modify, we're proposing to keep the definition of convenience store as it is, so that somebody that comes in with what we would consider a convenience store but doesn't have fuel service would be defined differently. Okay.
And can you guys remind me, in an instance of a convenience store that may sell alcohol, is what's the minimum distance required? It's only schools and churches. It's not to residential, correct?
Right.
Okay.
And I don't remember what the
I think it's
The minimum,
500
I think it's
feet to
500
schools and
If
churches.
it's, obviously, it's just, mostly probably wouldn't be liquor, it'd just be beer and wine, and I believe that's 200 yards.
Okay.
So 600
200
feet.
yards, 600 feet. Okay, so it's actually potentially more restrictive to church and school, but not to residential.
yes,
Yeah, the question usually on that one comes into how they measure it.
yes.
So that's come up before, and
For a church, it's actually to the it's to their door, whereas
Correct.
a school, it's to their property.
property line.
Right.
I assume that all current uses within the city would be grandfathered,
Yes.
including if property changed hands, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Is the intent, as I read the two quotes, one of the second quote talks about, or other materials that require special handling or storage. Are we singling out gasoline? Or are we truly trying to deal with anything that would be considered a hazardous material and that we're trying to apply the 100% to the hazardous material?
Further in the memo, we are we point out that this amendment is specifically to gas stations and convenience stores. We'll deal with the hazardous material as a separate item.
Okay.
i.e. propane tanks?
Potentially, yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, I mean, these days, even waste oil is classified as hazardous, and
That's even another.
you know, we're allowing waste oil in, you know, whatever you want to call them. I can't remember what the definition is. Not a convenience store, but as long as they're not pumping gas and they're just servicing, they don't have the 100-foot limitation. Yeah, as a result of this, right?
Oh, okay. Right, yes.
As a result of this, they're okay to be closer than 100 feet,
Like a
even
tire
though they
store
have
or-
hazardous materials.
Yes, sir.
We define that as service station, right?
Service station, right.
I'm just trying to I'm trying to make sure that what we're trying to do is to protect surrounding residences from hazardous materials versus trying to exclude gas stations.
Sure.
George, to that point, you know, the term hazardous material is a term of art, and it covers anything that's regulated
Right.
under Title 49 of the Code of Federal Regulations, and it's huge. I mean, a bottle of Clorox is a hazardous material that's regulated, so we've got to be a little bit careful.
Yes, sir.
How
And
we
again,
define
that suggestion is quoted from that particular meeting, and the intent was anything that would probably be flammable, explosive, et cetera. Hazardous, yes. I mean, obviously there are other hazardous materials, but I don't think the
hairspray
intent
is a
was.
hazardous material.
Yeah, I don't think the intent was to get that far into it. So we'll be looking at that separately. So.
What was the thinking behind using the overlay as the vehicle to do this instead of use permit?
I'll let you answer
Just
that one, Robin.
Basically, we could still cover the entire city as overlays, so it's not like it would be excluded. And that was just seemed like the best way to address the issue. And it's been done both ways in other jurisdictions, so I just chose that way because I felt like it would be easier for people to see too. Sometimes when you put things in the ordinance, it kind of gets buried, but usually we're pretty upfront with people. Please read the overlay district, and there are other exclusions in the overlay district, so we just felt that was the most appropriate way.
What do we do going forward if, and let's use Arnold Mill as just an example, but what do we do going forward if Arnold Mill's master plan develops a plan that has commercial, quote-unquote, land uses in there, but the underlying zoning obviously isn't changing, and we wanted to have a service station within there? They're going to have to get a variance in order to do that, or are we saying, because we're saying they're not allowed?
I think
right?
it depends on how we structure whatever overlay district comes out of that master plan.
Right.
We could structure it such that overlay district takes precedence no matter what the Northwest says, so that basically the Northwest doesn't apply within that particular area.
Kind of like Highway 9 or State Route 9.
All right. It's just something to watch out for, I guess. Yep. I don't have any other questions on the memo. Does anybody else have any questions on the memo itself?
Just one clarification, the one that struck me, or two things that struck me in the memo was Snellville versus Cherokee. And Snellville's been through, significant change in the last 10 years, going from what was a very rural jurisdiction to now pretty urban in comparison to Cherokee at 400. Do we know when the last time was that either of those jurisdictions updated their setback requirements? And is that 100 feet a long time ago might have been a long way, and now it may seem like nothing when they look at how developed Snellville is in particular. Okay, thank you.
I think the more interesting one is Forsyth County.
Yeah.
Yeah, 90 feet.
30 feet in a
Yeah.
neighborhood shopping
Yeah.
district.
Yeah,
I think it's
pretty
the other way
remarkable.
around.
Okay, if there are no other questions on the memo itself, Robin, do you want to just walk through the proposed changes in the ordinance?
Okay. Okay, the first area we're working with is the State Route 9 Overlay District. There's some miscellaneous provisions at the end of that ordinance. So I just added, all properties developed with service stations or convenience stores must be located a minimum of 100 feet from any AG1 agricultural district. Change that. Residential district or any zoning district developed with a residential use. Measurements shall be from property line to property line. So basically just making that statement for the Highway 9 district, and the similar or not exact same item would be added into the Northwest, which also covers Crabapple and Birmingham as well. And that's under what I decided was the most appropriate in the overlay district with building site orientation, setback, height, scale, and parking. And again, says all properties developed at service stations, as I stated before. It's the same exact statement as in the Highway 9. And that would be under setbacks. Number 3 deals with setbacks. So, you know, when anybody's looking to develop anything, they would see that if they were going to develop a service station, gas station, they have to look at setbacks. Make it really complicated.
Any questions about either the location or the language?
You asking the table?
Yeah.
I'd just like to comment that with an opportunity to do it only really once, I would like to reconsider the 100 feet, and I don't know what the right number is, but I think that 100 feet may be too little. And we've got a suggestion from council to consider a number significantly larger at 300. I don't know what the right answer is, but but without thinking about it, measuring it from property line to what that looks like, and from here to the door is probably 90 feet, 75 feet to 90 feet maybe. That doesn't seem like very far.
That's why we did the maps.
Yeah, looking at the maps too, and obviously, as we brought up Arnold Mill, those areas that are left are pretty rural today. The one off of New Providence, I'm assuming that's where Union Grill is?
Yes, there's a couple, there's a couple of C1s near, Union Grill, as well as there's like another C1 just
Yeah.
down the street from there. Again, it's not a 1955 zoning, but it's like from 1972 or something, and there's no exclusion. In all honesty, you probably still couldn't develop it.
Right.
One, because 100 foot, and even if you didn't have 100 foot, we would require a 50-foot buffer all around it.
Right,
So it's
which would
just,
eliminate that property.
yeah, even without that requirement.
And wouldn't that also be the case for Birmingham Road and Birmingham Highway?
Paul, look at.
Well, yeah, you got it. You're looking at the
other
wrong map.
You're looking for a map.
Once the change has been made, you're looking at only
That's
5
what's left
parcels.
is 100
Ah,
feet.
okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty.
All the ones.
That's pretty restricted.
Yeah, I don't know that.
But I think, just to address Paul's question the other way, did you look at all, what if it was 200 feet? Does that change anything on this map? I mean, how
I
far are
think-
these from,
The,
I don't think we ran a buffer that was for 200 feet because frankly, the 100-foot buffer came out to be so
So small.
constrained.
I mean, intuitively, I can't think of anything around those Walmart out parcels that's residential
No.
anywhere near there.
the only one that could possibly, the one on the lower part of
Yeah, the one-
Yeah.
9.
That's where Alpha
That
Sports
is
was,
like,
right?
it's very close to being it could be just under 100. That's kind of a little on the iffy. It's already probably out the door.
Yeah.
That would probably be the only one for sure that would be eliminated because of Winthrop Chase being across the street kind of
Right. Well, and
diagonally.
you got residential behind there too, right?
There is
It's
no-
pretty far, no, because you got industrial behind it, and there's
Well, and there's
that,
a Shell
um,
station
that
that's
M1.
like,
Well, that's right,
what,
right
200
on-
feet?
Yeah,
Yeah,
on the road,
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have the storage, self-storage.
The Shell station
Wrapped
is on
around
the-
it.
right,
mean,
Alpharetta, yeah.
So, you know, we have a C1 next to it that was zoned, and then behind it wraps around that M1. So it's pretty far away from the rear, so really the closest residential is going to be the Winthrop Chase. And it's, I included it just to be conservative, but in reality, if somebody got out there, then
They're not
it
gonna-
could possibly be eliminated.
I noticed one of the ones you didn't talk about in your summary one was Alpharetta. Do we know what Alpharetta is?
They don't have one.
They don't have one, so.
In fact, the planner asked me.
Anywhere that we abut Alpharetta, they could put a gas station.
I'm sorry?
Anywhere that we abut Alpharetta, they could put a gas station
Don't
there.
say that out loud.
theoretically.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Don't say that out loud.
Now, they have historically encouraged them to be in.
We have heard that they encourage them to be not on corners, but I don't see how that's true. But in fact,
Encouraging them doesn't do much.
Yeah. Right. well, in fact, the planner had asked, well, when you do yours, let me know how it goes.
What's,
Same thing. So.
can you think of an example that's more restrictive than 100?
That wouldn't completely,
No.
well, of course, the Cherokee County example is more restrictive. It's at 400. But
yeah.
I'm not sure that we would have any sites left at all. And if that's the intent, that's fine.
Right,
If we went with 400.
right.
I think there were some places in New England that was like 1,000 feet or something really huge. So, but nothing around here was that large.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
find some in New
but
England.
their intention is elimination,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think so.
and, yeah, right.
I can't imagine looking at this map that there's going to be 6 people lined up to build gas stations next to each other in front of Walmart.
Right.
Paul, you okay with the 100 feet or?
Yeah, now that I'm looking at the correct map,
That makes a big
Scaring
difference.
you a
Yeah.
little bit.
yeah.
Robin, I just have one question. It goes back to kind of the placement in here. The placement in Highway 9 or the Highway 9 overlay makes sense to me. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the other one only because, and I don't know if there's a better place, but maybe we need to amend the title of that section because it talks about 1145 is building size, orientation, setback, height, scale, and parking. This is none of those. This is not a setback.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a front yard setback. It's really more of a buffer area.
Right, and as you read through the setback section, all the things that are in there where we're adding E really are setbacks. I mean, it's probably the right place to put it, but could we modify the title of that section to reflect this and then put it in as maybe item 7 instead of throwing it into setbacks?
Excuse me.
Yeah, that's fine. You want to just, we'll add a title. I don't want to do, it's hard to do buffers. Can we talk about buffers?
Or separation?
Yeah, separation
That'd be
distance,
good.
yeah.
That was my only
Yeah,
comment.
do that.
Language is
You're right.
fine. All right, if there are no other questions of staff, we would like to hear from the audience. She did.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, we need to read that in
I'll
the
read
record.
it to the.
Thank
You
you.
want-
Is that what you were going to do?
If you guys have all read it, that's fine, I didn't know.
Well, I can
No,
read
no,
it.
we want to read it into the record.
Do you want a hard copy of it?
Oh, I read it.
I can read
I was
it.
going to speak after you read that, if that's.
Okay, yeah. Let me go ahead and read it. Thank you. I, Heidi Souter, 525 Sunflower Court, Milton, am unable to attend this evening's meeting and appreciate my comments being read aloud for the record during the proceedings. I have been a resident of the Highway 9 overlay area for over 11 years. Needless to say, I have witnessed much growth. My family and I have benefited from the conveniences that have come with this growth. We leave our car at home more and travel on foot or by bike to nearby stores and eateries. As you know, the 4 square mile Highway 9 overlay area is the largest commercial area in our city and is also home to half of Milton's population. Did you also know that all non-fuel related auto service repair businesses in the overlay are located along Highway 9? There are 2 car washes and 5 auto repair centers in the 1.5 mile stretch between Windward and Bethany Bend. There are also 2 gas stations located along Webb Road, between Deerfield and Morris Roads, and 2 more at the Highway 9 Windward intersection on the Alpharetta side. I am grateful to have these services nearby and frequently patronize them. I have always been a proponent of responsible development here in Milton. It is important that Milton's businesses thrive and its residents are safe. When it comes to the matter at hand and the fact that commercial properties along Highway 9 abut residential properties, prudence must be used to protect residents from the dangers of hazardous materials. Accidents do happen, and better safe than sorry really do apply here. Just Google Nashville tanker fire March 2010. Therefore, I support the following recommendation by staff and urge you to recommend that council adopt it in its entirety. All convenience stores and service stations should be located a minimum of 100 feet from the subject property line to any agricultural or residentially zoned district within the State Route 9 and Northwest Fulton overlay districts. Thank you, Heidi Sauer.
I would like to point out, I mean, I don't know where she got that text. Maybe it
Yeah, I know.
was posted somewhere, but I would like to point out that her recommendation or her request is not what we are talking about. It has agricultural thrown in here as well.
Well, we also,
Let me see her.
I mean, the ordinance amendments that have been proposed to us are limited to residential.
no, it
No.
doesn't include it.
AG1.
Yeah, okay. Good point.
I think she's just saying a different way to it. She's saying agricultural or residentially zoned district, which would be AG1.
Yeah, good point. Okay. Okay. Having read that, your turn.
Robin?
I'm Diane Palmer. I live at 3300 Bethany Bend.
Oh, the card I was actually,
It's on. Okay. I basically am here, I want to speak in support of the recommendations of staff on this and in support also of Heidi's memo, which I had been able to read ahead of time. I live in the section of I'm actually Heidi's neighbor. I live in the section of Bethany Bend between Highway 9 and McGinnis Ferry. And it's just, we're just very, I guess my friends and I who I've spoken to, I'm speaking for myself. I am a member of the Highway 9 Design Guidelines group, but I'm not representing that group, I'm representing myself. So I support the buffer as staff has recommended it, as you all have described it, for all of the overlay districts. Obviously, Highway 9 district is where I live, and I'm very concerned that it go in there as well. I really look forward to businesses and commercial endeavors that support our neighborhood going there, and I really feel that in addition to the safety issues, which there are major concerns with, I do feel that the pedestrian areas, the type of businesses we really look forward to walking to and supporting could really be jeopardized if we have the safety concerns and the fuel concerns there. So I just want to be here and support what is being recommended. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion, comments, questions? If not, we need a motion to approve or not. Not hearing any, I'll make them myself.
fine, take a second to structure.
I move we approve RZ 10-04 to amend the City of Milton zoning ordinance to create a required distance for convenience stores and service stations from residential uses and zoning districts within the Northwest Fulton overlay and the State Route 9 overlay districts, which are Chapter 64, Article 7, Division 5, and Chapter 64, Article 7, Division 6.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
during the reading of Section 64, 1097, I picked up several spelling. So I will not bore the commission with all of those corrections, but pass them on. But there are several that, when we redo this, need to be corrected.
Are these spelling errors in the amended portion or in the?
No, they are not. That's why I waited to hold that until the vote was taken.
Okay. Good thought.
We'll clean that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item, Robin.
Okay, the next item is under old business, update on future text amendments projects for the city of Milton County, 2010, 2011, and we have some handouts for you.
Yes.
And if you want to just go ahead and just submit this, before I forget.
Lynn, do you want to lead us through this? Please?
Yeah, let me do that. I think everybody can hear me. Can't get the mic to move. I updated the listing that you all had helped us put together and took that to the council. And they were very much in support of the listing. They didn't make any specific changes. I did take it along with this presentation you'll find on your desk about specifically regarding rural preservation and innovative zoning. And if you remember, that was one of their priority issues that they wanted to address. I think initially what they were looking at was simply a new zoning classification, but in looking at it and kind of discussing with them what their real goals were, I think that it includes a lot more than that. Much of it is very much Planning Commission related. And you'll see in this presentation that there are several of the objectives that have asterisks by those. Those are the ones that actually are currently on your list, or very similar to those that are on your list. So it would, I hope, make you feel better to know that your goals and their goals are very much aligned in this. However, it also leads to a lot of projects. So if you will look at the Gantt chart here, I've tried to condense it a little bit so it all fits on one page, but I did still have to print it on an 11 by 17 sheet. That includes approximately 25 different projects. And I've shown them with start dates approximately September and October in many cases, and they run through 2012, June of 2012 in some cases. Tried to spread them out. Still a lot of projects, I have to admit. I also included on here, in addition to the projects that were on your all's list, the projects that we currently have underway or have budgeted for the 2010-2011 budget year. So some of these aren't really your projects, but I want you to have a clear idea of what's going on in our office so that you can see where we might need help in some things. So some, obviously, there will be some that will have some consultant help, but even with that, there's got to be a lot of staff support behind that to help guide and direct what direction those projects take. So specifically, with regards to the projects and priorities that the Planning Commission had, I've picked out 4 that I think we could use one-on-one help with. And I hope that these align with your ideas as well. The first is part of the Conservation Design Plan, which is, I've split into really 4 pieces here. Incorporating the LID practices, which is low impact design, creation of a conservation subdivision ordinance, creation of conservation easements ordinance, creation of TDR feasibility study and ordinance. The one I picked from that was conservation subdivisions. I know that has been a very hotly debated topic in Milton. Particularly, there have been a lot of very bad examples in some neighboring counties, in fact, and but I really feel like, and I believe I have the support of council in saying that we can do them the right way and achieve preservation of what we're looking for, preservation of that rural typology as well as true rural characteristics. So in saying that, I think that is one of those areas that will need specific help from Planning Commission on. So I think that there was some discussion of maybe some members assigning themselves to particular projects. So consider this one. In addition, amendment to the sign ordinance, I think, is, from a staff perspective, another one that we will need specific help with. We've got to do some outreach to the community and to the Business Alliance and others regarding the sign ordinance. I know that, again, Milton has been very careful to craft our sign ordinance in a very conservative way, and that's fine. There are some other needs that for signage that we haven't really addressed, and those are the areas that I propose that we look at first. Yes, sir?
Is that, I mean, do you have specific objectives for the sign ordinance, or do you want to take a giant step back, poll the business community, real estate folks, et cetera, and say, what are your issues?
I don't know that we want to take a giant step back. I do want to poll them and see what their issues
Yeah.
are.
I get quite a few complaints on that.
Yeah, we do too. And some variance requests.
That'll impact their business, I'm assuming, in a negative way?
They think, I mean, that, you know, it's promotion, advertising oriented, and
Absolutely.
And there are other ways to look at some of the issues that we're seeing, particularly in what I would call a planned development, or a development like the Semler development that was developed as a whole, in coming to us with more of a sign package versus individual signage. And that individual signage, as long as it meets the sign package that the Planning Commission has approved, gets more of an expedited approval. So things like that, like I say, would be helpful, but not necessarily a giant step back, but would still be helpful to the businesses because they know going in, these are the signs that are allowed, and these are the types that are allowed, period.
We have it today, they just don't like it very much.
Well,
But
and
It
that's
is appropriate
true.
that we go back and now take a careful assessment of reality versus what was on paper. And
Yes.
And there clearly were some mistakes.
I,
There were some opportunities for improvement, let's say that.
There you go.
I will say that every time, just to close the loop on this, every time someone complains, I say, write down specifically what you think ought to be changed and what you think it ought to be changed to, and give us a precedent location. I have not gotten a single response. So I don't want to make it seem like there's piling on, going on, and obvious idiocy, but some of the real estate sign constraints are deemed to be too small, and maybe that's just what it ought to be, whether they're smaller than
Physical size.
physical size. Yeah, I'm sorry, physical size constraints. What I'm really referring to, and maybe that's just what it ought to be. But I think when we went through it originally, Robin, you were probably the only one in the room. Forgive me, maybe some of you guys are smarter than I am, but that understood the implications of some of those things, particularly the measurements. I didn't, have a sense of the reality of what it really looks like from a distance, as you're, and the view shed impact and all that sort of thing. So you get smarter. Maybe we might have, who knows, might have made
You hear more
a difference.
complaints from the real estate? I mean, because, that's what I do, so it's kind of interesting that my 7 years in the business, I mean, we fight it all the time, but it is what it is, and a lot of, especially Sandy Springs, has really bear down on what you can and cannot do, and we just have learned to accept it and deal with it. But I know in some cases, people have issues with especially open house signs on Sundays.
Yeah.
And you can have them out by a certain time, but they must be picked up after a certain time, period. I mean, we will allow it, but I don't know. It doesn't bother me. Personally, I think it litters.
Well, that settles it then.
What we hear from primarily in
She
regards
just,
to
she
real
just
estate
earned her way
signage.
onto the committee. Sounds to me like.
regards to
Let's
real
tick
estate
that
signage.
project off.
Our commercial vacant properties, those that are for sale, that's a lot of what we hear, because there's not really a good vehicle for that. Commercial vacant properties typically want a very a larger sign, that might stay up for
Yeah,
years.
right.
In some
And I have to
cases.
agree. I mean, and then the sign is run down and miserable and faded. But as far as the real estate signs, it's life. deal with it.
On the flip side,
I'm sorry.
there are some opportunities that we missed too. We know that Crabapple, for example, has been trying to identify itself as an area of business that sets itself apart with some decorative signs that today I think our ordinance prohibits, and I think it's worthy of some consideration
Yeah.
for that. We know that there was some Birmingham Crossroads, which is a pet peeve of mine, having worked on that project for so long. I know that in my mind, the intended ordinance addressed, or the ordinance intended to address signs in its entirety, but apparently upon closer scrutiny, we haven't necessarily addressed properties that face interior, and that needs to be cleaned up. Just provide them some reasonable opportunity, but also that they have to be compliant with some of the tougher ones that things are in there too. So.
Not to sing an old song, but I think we also all believe that there needs to be better enforcement of what we already have. I mean, I'm not picking on anybody that's got high school graduates, but I hate it this time of year when those graduation signs go up in front of developments and they never come down. They're up there for weeks at a time. And I'm sure they're not getting permits.
Some are.
Most are probably
The
not.
ones who know
To
are-
Curtis's point,
they're supposed to
They're way
are.
beyond the
Yeah.
size that's allowed for something like that.
I'll give you a good story. The flip side is I've just had an interesting exchange with the new liquor store at Birmingham Crossroads. Apparently her sign was,
What were you doing in there, Paul?
I engaged her buying liquor.
Money for liquor.
I was
Just
shocked.
meeting the business community.
Actually, what drew me in all honesty, was the flashing neon strobe light on the top shelf. So I went in and engaged the business owner and welcomed her to the community. And she, once learning that I had a responsibility that I did, she gave me an earful.
And you arrested her.
I did.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Immediately informed her of her
She beat me to it.
sign
She,
violation.
Turned off
I
the
intended
strobe.
intending
That
to
was
Ex-
easy to- that was
ex
easy to-
sign
that-
police.
That fit the Jack Daniels.
I asked her for all the neon signs and beer signs. But no, actually, seriously, she beat me to it. Apparently, we had already spoken to her about non-compliance of the color of her sign not being within the Pantone color shade, and she intended to comply. So she was being very outspoken about her frustration, but her intent to comply. We had a healthy conversation about it, and then I pointed out the strobe light, which she was equally willing to cooperate with, and was very pleasant about it. And the strobe's now been removed. It hasn't been turned on since, and it's now gone. But
She's an
she was
nice
willing to
gal.
comply with our sign ordinance when it was pointed out.
You don't know that. She just sees you coming and she turns it off.
No, it's actually, it's physically removed.
Curtis goes by it every day. You
Get rid of the strobe.
No, it's actually.
No,
physically gone.
she's a nice gal.
She's very nice. She
Yeah.
lives up the street, so.
Did you
I don't know where
purchase
she
something
lives, but-
before you
I
left?
used to
I
live in
didn't.
Cherokee that way.
Okay.
All right, the
We're
third
back.
one on the list.
Could I
Third
add
one.
one more thing to the sign discussion? And this may be a nit and it may not be appropriate for the sign ordinance, but I exchanged some notes with at least one member of the Historic Preservation Committee and was sort of interested in the idea that we might have a standard for historic signage. Maybe not. I mean, the notion of regulation is kind of abhorrent, on its face. But they don't know of any. They send you pictures. Here's some stuff they do in Alpharetta, and here's some stuff they do in Roswell, and maybe that's just fine. But it seems like there might be some value to consistency. It's just an idea that I meant to
You're talking about
bring
signs that
up.
would go on like a specific property, like
Yeah.
a wall or something?
Yeah. Anything like that would
Like
would
the
allow
state
or
puts out,
historic
it's
sign.
a
Historic
monument.
sites.
George left.
Yeah.
even if it's just a guideline and not
That's a
a,
good point.
and it may be something that they do, but when I asked the question, they really kind of didn't have an answer. And otherwise, we're going to eventually end up with a bunch of different stuff, different styles of
That's a good
things,
point.
and
One of the things that they had spoken about when that thing was going through was that they wanted to be able to have signage to identify districts too.
Yeah,
That were
right.
historic districts. And that would make sense to have some continuity there.
yeah, I think so. I mean, it may be overdoing it, but it seems to me.
Well, I mean, ultimately, those signs are going to placed and paid for by the city. I mean, it would make sense that we could have a standard for something like that, because they're not going to be privately placed.
And give it some thought in advance, and I think those are kind of personality setting, so.
Lynn, were there any others besides the two you identified that we ought to at least talk about tonight or not?
Two more. The text amendments for Green Communities designation, number 14. There'll be a variety of different text amendments. In fact, if you remember Michelle's presentation to the council, there were about 45 different potential point projects. So a good 20 of those are policies and programs and regulations. So if there's anyone with not a green thumb, but a green bent, I would appreciate some help with that as well. At least Michelle would. And then the fourth would be to address permitted uses regarding pain clinics and rehab centers. I know that is one that has been particularly
I mean, talking to Chairman Fred?
championed. Yes, sir. However, we just can't get to it until later unless we've got some
That's
help.
okay. By that time, I'll be fully prepared, yes.
Fabulous,
I
thank
will.
you. So I'll put Fred's name next
You
to that
can do
one.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And you'll probably work
If you
with Robin
complain,
on that
you better
one.
be able to be forward with it.
Robin, thanks for all your work on this.
Oh, she did all
Lynn,
that.
Lynn,
That's all right.
sorry.
It's a team effort.
What we had talked about in the past with this was trying to move some of these things forward, since we continue to have kind of a slack agenda for the most part, and try and move some of these things forward that we can help with. And what we had talked about was asking if there are individual members that would like to volunteer to work on any or all of these outside of the commission meetings, so that we can move some of them forward. I don't think we're looking for a huge sense of formality. They would be led by Robin and Lynn. The work would be led by Robin and Lynn, but it's trying to get a leg up on it so that we don't see these for the first time when we're here and do all the wordsmithing that we seem to do in these meetings. If we can get a couple of people to work on these outside of the planning commission meetings, I think it would help the efficiency of the process a little bit. We know Fred wants to work on number 15. There seems to be a lot of energy around number 10. Who would like to actually work on number 10, if anybody?
I'll work on 14.
14? Yeah. Joe's 14. Paul's 10. Fred's 15.
When you say work,
I'll work on 4.
I mean, of course, obviously I have a sign issue. Okay.
You want to work on 10?
Well, what, I mean, I know we're all busy, you guys, and I don't want to say I'm going to and then I don't, because I work, as we all do, nonstop.
Yeah.
So when you say, what are you requiring?
We're not requiring anything.
I know requiring, but what are you asking?
We're asking that let's just take number 10, for example. The signed ordinance exists. Lynn, Robin are going to identify those things that they feel are things we need to look at, change, modify, issues from their perspective. Whoever amongst us decides that they want to work on that is going to identify areas that we think need to be changed, amended, or looked at from our perspective, and then we're going to try and actually do that and prepare a draft amendment to bring back to us.
Was it fair to say liaison to staff, where they've got a contact point amongst our team, would probably have an elevated level of dialogue in non-planning commission meetings?
Right.
But you're not necessarily chairing it.
No.
You're just carrying an extra responsibility for it.
What I think we're trying to avoid is if we let's use the telecommunications ordinance instead of the historic preservation ordinance. What we're trying to avoid is an ordinance coming in front of us. We don't know where it's been. We don't know how it got here. We don't know how the changes that have been proposed are in there. And we got 7 people sitting here looking at it for the first time. It's to try and get enough involvement from ground zero so that when it comes here, we've got a couple of people here that can say, here's what we did, here's why we did it, And we'll have trust in each other that we at least understand that so that we can deal with it, I think, more effectively than if it's just coming in out of the cold. And you know, to Jennifer's point, I mean, don't interpret, if you want to work on that, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, if I'm saying I'm going to work on number 4, what that means to me is that at some point, Lynn and or Robin are going to call and say, we're going to get together and talk about this, and I'll say, yeah, I'll be there, I know I won't, and there'll be some emails back and forth with whatever we're talking about, but it'll be within that small subgroup until we get to the point that we feel like it's ready to bring it to the Plan Commission. And I think Lynn's been relatively generous in the time frames. I mean, there's 4 months allowed for amending the sign ordinance, which is a pretty good length of time if you think about it. I mean, because it's a developed ordinance that's already there. Some of these where we're starting from scratch, that's a different story, but in this case, we're dealing with tweaking, hopefully.
Well, to that, like on the pain clinics, Cobb and Marietta already have these in place. So I would see going over there. I mean, I'd be happy to go over there, collect their ordinances, talk to some people. What are your problems? Why 600 feet from a school or a church? I mean, I'd have no problem with that.
I'd love to have the research help.
Yeah, that's what I.
But I think each one's going to be
Different.
depending on who's involved and what amount of time they have and what their energy level is around it. I mean, you know, you are absolutely the proponent around this.
Well, I'm a little stronger on signs too, but
Well, I don't, you know, I
No,
know there's
no,
not just one person on these two.
No,
You can
no,
join
no,
me
not
in
at all.
second.
I would
Yeah, I'd
be
be
happy
curious
if
to help
there's.
you on number 4 as well.
Okay?
That's just,
I'll put Chris.
Great.
well, not to get too far off tangent here, but, I mean, this would be looking at not only new subdivisions, but existing ones that want it to be maybe redefined as a conservation subdivision?
In this particular effort, I believe we're just going to look at just new subdivisions and how they're planned.
Right. Okay.
I'd be interested in being involved in that one, too.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know that we can have more than 3, or else we've
We'll
got
end
a
up in a
quorum.
public meeting.
Pardon me?
I don't think we can
Well,
have more than
sunshine
3, or else we'll have a
problem.
quorum.
Isn't that,
That's
isn't
3.
that only 3?
Yes, that's only 3.
No more volunteers on that one.
Okay, 4 is closed out. I heard Jennifer
Thank
say
you.
that she wanted to work on signs, to the extent
Is that
that
right,
she can.
Jennifer?
To the extent that I can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got plenty of great ideas.
I think just polling the real estate community by itself would be a pretty big value add, but we need specifics, not just complaints, you know? And that'd be probably
Just tell them
helpful.
you're going to find them and they'll shape up real quick because they don't have any money. There you go.
I would like to help Joe on
That's how
number
simple that
14
is.
too.
Okay.
Does anyone want to help Fred?
He's on his own.
He's on his own? Okay.
Don't blame me if I come in half
Well,
rock.
let's be honest, though. Fred's got the most time on his hands.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And he's in the most pain, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's leave it at that. Just to summarize, Chris, Curtis, and I will help on number 4. Paul and Jennifer are going to help on number 10. Joe and I will help on number 14, and Fred is going to help on number 15.
What is the, I know we've talked about this, but the conservation easement ordinance? Would there be any benefit in some background investigation on that one?
Absolutely, because at some point, when you have a conservation subdivision, you've got all this open space. In many cases, they're going to want to put it in some sort of an easement or permanent protection that may not necessarily be an HOA protection. So, yeah, I think that would
So
be
that,
helpful.
would that be some variation of like a land trust or
It could be,
it could be a public form of that or something?
yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'll,
Okay.
Is the
I'll
only-
deal
is
with
the
that.
only member that is a holder of one of those. That makes sense.
I don't have what do I have? A holder of one.
What do you have? You do have something.
It was the tax, don't you have the tax?
Oh, Kuva.
Yeah.
Kuva?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not what
exactly
we're
the
talking
same.
No, no, no,
I
no,
know,
no.
Yeah.
I know.
But
But are you
that makes you
familiar with
closer
with
than
being
anybody
in the
else.
South, in the, whatever, Cumberland Island?
Yeah, I've dealt with it down there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not an expert, but I've
Sure.
researched it a fair amount. We've talked about setting them up. Anyway, I'd be interested in that.
Great. And we've got that one. Number 4 is, well, we've tentatively set it to start in November. That could slide up or slide back, but if it slides up, then something else will have to move back. So if you're comfortable with that, we'll do some background research, and then we'll start it officially in November,
Good.
if that's all right with you all.
Sure.
That's 4?
Number 4? Mm-hmm. And then the sign ordinance we've got starting in September. Like I said, we've done some of the background footwork for that, but we haven't really delved into it very deeply yet. So
Okay. So just a heads up, there's 2 weeks in September, I've got a pretty heavy travel schedule, and I'll let you
Okay.
know what those dates are, but
okay,
I'll always be available via email and
Great.
phone. I just may not be physically in town for
All right.
the middle 2 weeks of September.
super. And then Mr. Kramer, Mr. Ragsdale on number 14, the Green Communities designation. We are working on some of that now, but again, like I said, in order to kind of space it out amongst staff, we're looking at an October start date, official start date for that. And then, Fred, we can slide yours up since.
Up on it.
On that
Well, I
last
think I-
one,
I
yeah.
think I heard
If you're
Fred
ready
say-
to start, start.
I think I heard Fred say he'd be ready based on the timetable you have here.
I'll be
It's
ready.
fishing day.
Because I think it starts in March, and I don't think you want to wait that long, so
No.
that's fine. That's fine.
And I was
Thank
gonna-
you.
Yeah, I was going to mention something too. There's the latest, what I think and my records of the latest version of the landscape business that you all worked on
Right.
last summer.
Right.
So if it's not, if you have a more recent one that I just don't have, just let me know. But we're going to be discussing it at the next, in September, although it won't be an official text amendment because I have to have a CCIM to be, a meeting to be advertised, so it won't go to CCIM until the end of
We're
September.
going to be discussing this, or we're going to be discussing an application?
No, that, not an application. We will be getting, we should be getting the landscape group again for the deadline. They're trying to come in for September 7th. We would hear it in October. The actual
Taylor
use
Road?
permit, yeah. No, this is the one that was denied on Arnold Mill.
Oh, okay.
And they're coming back.
The one
with a
that's
new
still
plan.
operating, but not, yeah.
But they've been fine. Cited.
Cited, yes.
So anyway, but this is just, this is on one of the items on our list here.
But this is coming back officially
Right.
because of them?
No.
No, this was part of your list.
No, I know that.
So,
but it-
yeah.
Okay. But it wasn't one that we just talked about as one of the priorities that we were going to focus on, so.
Well, but it comes up on our,
I think it's
I-
a complete
I
landscape
don't know about
business use
everybody else, I
provision,
think
number
we've all
11.
done enough work on
So-
this, we just ought to keep working on it as a group.
right, and that's
Yeah.
why I've distributed it, and if it's the correct one, I'll send out the soft
Okay.
copy. And then, we have some suggestions that we're gonna come with, just talking with Lynn, since she wasn't a part of the first round. So I'll come up with, some edits to it to try to encompass the existing one, because I think there's still important parts of the existing use permit,
Okay.
and kind of marry it together with this and get your guys' comments too,
Okay, great.
so.
Yeah. So the next meeting, we'll just have discussion on this. We can't vote on it. But then the following meeting, we'll have a proposal, a draft.
Am I correct, that as of right now, there's nothing on the agenda for September?
Well, yes.
Well,
This
other
due
than-
date's it was actually August, I'm sorry.
What's that?
I'm thinking too many months ahead, sorry.
Yeah. What did you say?
There's nothing else on the September
No,
agenda.
I mean, if you
Yeah.
didn't want to discuss it, we could hold it. We would
No,
just
I
think-
wanted to make sure I understood.
Yes,
So
it's
the
the only
intent is to
item,
discuss
yes.
this in September?
Right, yes.
Okay.
Hate to pass up the chance for a meeting, you know?
Sure now.
Actually, I took a phone call today from a community citizen of Milton, asking how to get on our agenda and asking if it would be appropriate to make a presentation. And I stopped and, thought about it, and I thought, we haven't had any presentations. And then I realized that there was that one stone and brick
Right, yeah.
companies.
Yeah,
So
right.
we have a precedent that was set. And it was a woman from the equestrian community who was wanting to give us a heads up on some things that they're trying to become organized and
That's
trying
good
to
job.
support
Yeah.
businesses. And so I said, having the precedent set, I thought it would be appropriate to ask for time, set a specific amount of time, and then I asked them actually to reach out for you, Robin, to
Okay,
get on
that'd
the
be great.
agenda.
Yeah, you can send her my way. And we can
I was delighted that they were being proactive in trying to let us know some of their efforts to bring more business here, assemble themselves as an entity to be promoting equestrians and equestrian activities.
So is that something you'd like to see at the September meeting?
Well, I'm suggesting that they may be, because she was trying to move forward
If
sooner
they
rather than
approach-
later,
yeah, if they
it's likely
approach
that
you
she'll be
in a
approaching
timely
you for
manner.
September.
Yeah, maybe we don't sell them, then sell us.
Is there a maximum time that you all would like to allot for that if we're approached, assuming we're approached in the next little bit?
I don't know the scope of what they might be talking about, so it's hard to, why don't we tell them 30 minutes max and tailor whatever they're going to do.
Inclusive of discussion,
Yeah.
they expect us to respond.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
if it turns out there's a bunch of stuff that is going on, we'll limit it to that, and if there's not, we'll let them expand it, particularly if they're saying something we want to hear.
Yeah.
Super, thank you.
Okay, anything else for the good of the cause?
What's the background of this?
That came as further discussion from the council's retreat. One of their priorities that they didn't get to talk about and really explore much further was the, I think it's priority, it's listed here. Priority 2 and 3, innovative zoning classification. And again, in kind of prodding them a little bit as to exactly what they meant by innovative zoning classification.
Yeah.
Really, it boiled down to rural preservation and how zoning fits into that. So that's where that came from.
Who generated it?
I created the presentation.
Okay, all right. So it came, the ideas, what's is the purpose to advance the thinking? Let them see it after it was bubbled up and kind of let that
Yes, and
solidify?
to see it more as a holistic approach to the goal, so that we're not just trying to cure it with one fell swoop. It's just not going to happen. If, for instance, if you just created a single new zoning district, that might hit some of it, but it probably isn't going to do it really what they want to do. So,
Well, I think it's going to take a little while to connect the dots and see what the implications of wanting that to happen are, and I mean, you're smarter on it than anyone else, but from a practical standpoint, it's probably going to take some time to socialize that and say, okay, this is what that means from an implementation standpoint. All right, just curious. I was glad to see that done.
Lynn, I do have one question about that. It's just a kind of a gee whiz thing for me, but when I looked at the analysis of the parcels by size
yeah.
from 2000 to 2010, it looks like somehow in 2000 you were able to try and define the city limits, and the count was not a Northwest Fulton count, but really was a Melton count.
The parcel acreage was taken from everything that was Northwest Fulton, everything that was unincorporated, so it's not exactly the same city limits.
Yeah,
as
but it's
Milton.
pretty close.
But it's pretty close, yeah.
What the gee whiz for me was looking at 2010, the number of parcels was 8,600, and the number of parcels in 2010 was 50% more than that.
Wow.
In theoretically a reduced land mass, right? I
Wow.
mean, it certainly wasn't any bigger. If anything, it was smaller.
That
Yeah.
makes sense, though. I mean, that was the explosion, and
I didn't realize it was that big.
God, I wouldn't have guessed that. Gosh.
Yeah, Michelle found that
The
20,000
2000.
map and some of the files we got from Fulton County, and then
So
we were like,
the-
oh, look at this, and then.
It was very telling when you start looking at the 2010 view in those exploded areas. I mean, in the specific areas of Birmingham and Little River corridor, you can just see that all of those, or not all of them, but the majority of those parcels that were large acreage parcels have just been turned into single 1 acre lot subdivisions.
Well, although, that was the other thing, when you look at those numbers that I found interesting too. If you look at the 20 to 40, 40 to 60, and 60 plus, the number of parcels in each one of those categories went up, not down,
Right.
which intuitively doesn't make sense. Those ought to be the ones that contributed to the 1 acre parcels.
Yeah. And also interesting that a lot of the stuff that's platted as 1 acre residential, although they're platted that way, they're, because of the economic environment, they're not developed. It's
Yeah.
just, unfortunately, cleared land, tree canopy's gone, and lots are empty.
I mean,
true.
the flip side of the gee whiz is I haven't yet been able to figure out exactly where the parcels came from that created the increase. You know what I'm saying? Because the only area of the larger ones that went down was the 10 to 20.
No, you're looking.
No, I don't
60
think so.
plus went from 32 to 14,
14.
40 to 60 went from 52 to
Yeah,
27.
you're right. I was looking at 20 to 40 went from 176
Yeah, the really
to
big ones
381.
came
Right, it was the
down.
large,
Yeah.
big parcels that
Yeah, you're
were
right.
divided.
You're right. I stopped at 20 to 40 and looked at that as an increase.
Lucky you didn't laugh at Paul for looking at the wrong map before.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the cause?
Yeah, just a couple quick questions.
Sure.
Now that the land clearing has begun for the new school,
Yes, sir.
I just happened to see that on the way, am I rushing on the way this evening? Is Fulton County contractors for an entity like that held responsible to our same codes? And in particular, what caught my attention was in their land clearing, they did leave a couple of specimen trees. They have not necessarily put up the fencing to ensure that
My fence.
They were putting up fence, well, you passed by it more recently, they were putting up the, the silt fence around the edge just late, I want to say,
just the example
like
I saw.
4:30, 5 o'clock, so maybe they're just setting it out.
Maybe, but, like there was definitely bulldozer work that was done in the last
Yeah.
24 to 48 hours. It was, pines aren't necessarily the most attractive trees, but there's a sizable, probably 24-inch caliper or larger pine right at the north end of the thing where the grading was right up to the tree. That tree's going to be gone.
Yeah,
in a matter
Yeah,
of
we'll
months.
send Mark out there.
So they are held accountable. I assume they're charged with recompense if those things go away.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just asked that our arborist please ensure that those guys are compliant.
All the money they save on construction costs, they probably feel like they can afford it.
Yeah. Next question I've got is, as businesses as well as private residences are doing lighting, whether it's for recreational use or just uplighting or whatever, there's a Campbell Power, I imagine, in our ordinance. I'm just asking for you to refresh my memory.
It's candle
They-
power and the night lights.
But they have to appeal to us.
Overlays.
Correct, or appeal to the city for the right to do that.
Doesn't it depend on
Well,
how
there's-
still it is too?
The reason I'm
Right.
asking is, and I'm a big supporter of the equestrian community, I endorse what they are, it's part of what, it's our heritage. And I came upon a site the other night that I was not aware had lighting, and it was like, oh my God, it was the night sky was completely lit up.
Was it a horse
It
place?
was a horse place.
Oh,
And,
outside arena?
yeah.
Kind of, oh, yeah, it's tough.
And it was like, how long has that been there? I've lived here for 10 years. It's the first time I've seen those lights.
Where
on.
is it?
It's on,
I would tell us that.
it's on Birmingham
Suspense.
Highway. No, I'm sorry, Birmingham Road, right just east of Canterbury Estates, between Canterbury and Shenandoah
On the
Farms.
Canterbury side?
On the Canterbury side, just in between
I've never seen it.
Canterbury.
Yeah, I don't know what you're
and
talking
Shenandoah.
about either.
Set
I know what
back
you're talking about, but I've
probably
never seen
300
it
or
lit.
400 yards from the road, but it was like, whoa, the night sky.
Maybe they were having a concert.
No, I'm sure they were riding. I had my windows down. I didn't hear any noise. And it was probably, it was 11 o'clock at night.
Wow.
So I was coming home from moving my son into college.
So that was between Canterbury Farms, you said, and?
Between Canterbury Estates, it's the
Canterbury
neighborhood
Estates.
development
Okay.
there.
It's on the south side of Birmingham Road.
We'll make sure they know you were the one that turned them in.
It's just, they may very well have been there for a long time.
And
It's-
Sh-
it
and
is never
Shannon,
turned
that,
on.
what's
In
the
between
That's where the
there and
lady that
Shannonville
owns the
Farms.
liquor store lives.
And it was probably, the ring was probably easily 300 yards or more from the road. I couldn't see the ring because the lights were above the trees. And it's like, number one, I don't remember seeing the lights there. Number two, I've never seen them turned on. Number three,
Well, they
it was
may
very late
either
at
be
night.
new, or if it's a private facility, they may just not use it very much at night.
Yeah.
You know, some
Yeah, maybe
people
at
set
the
them
end
up
of-
and just,
Into some horse
May
camp
very well have
or
been
something.
there forever and they're compliant, and there's no issue whatsoever. It was just the first time I'd noticed it.
All righty, we'll check into it.
Thank you. I think that was the last of my questions.
I think we need to deputize you.
I don't go looking for it. It's
Officer
sometimes
Paul.
It's just in your face.
And he didn't even purchase anything from the lady at the liquor store.
he's everywhere, you know, he's the Don Johnson of the,
Why are
of
you
the
out
Milton
there?
Planning Commission.
Cruising
One of
along?
the
Sunday
things
night,
that
I
I
was coming home from
remember-
moving my son into
That's right,
college.
okay.
One of the things that I remember from the old Fulton County days, do you remember Michael Allen?
no.
I can't, when did you move out to your house?
99.
Well, yeah, so you remember. Michael
98,
Allen-
99.
Michael Allen lived right around the corner from you, or right up the street from you. He lived, I can't remember the name of his place, but it had some ponds on it, and it was like an old cabin. It's on the right-hand side, about maybe 3 doors up above Birmingham Road. He moved to Texas. Anyway, he was a little guy, and he owned a sign business. He made signs.
Oh, yeah.
And he
Yeah.
got deputized for
The
Fulton
man of
County to remove
13,
signs.
the guy that had 13
Yeah,
water
yeah,
balls?
yeah, that's it.
Okay, right.
He got deputized to go out and pull down signs. I mean, that's what he did all the time. He
Then
pulled
Well,
down
you
once-
leave
signs.
his park.
Here, I'll give you a card.
Yeah,
I'll give you a
I knew
card
that,
and show
I
you
knew
how to
that.
do
You
it.
can have
Right.
a new one, but I got
Yeah,
no.
that's right. Yeah, you want to do it.
Not to digress, everyone wants to go home, but just, I attended the budget meeting last night, for part of it anyway. The one thing I guess I was disappointed in was a lot of the questions that we raised at the planning commission, or at the CPAC meeting last week. I think probably we would have felt much better about it had we had the level of detail that is available but not apparently published. They articulated specific projects that are within the $1,750,000. They articulated a bunch of things that they are planning on doing next year with those funds, but of course it's not visible to anybody. I don't know why it's not visible. I don't know why the detailed budget and plan isn't out on the website as a public document, but it's not. I'm hoping that we can get a copy of that, because again, I think we'll feel better about it once we see some of that. But it is what
I
it
think
is.
that'll be out. Keep an eye on the website. I think that'll come out fairly soon.
The other frustrating thing last night is that I printed the budget before I came to the meeting last night, and when I got here, the budget that they were talking about wasn't the same as what I had. It was different. But I guess we've come to expect that. Okay. We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So be it. Everybody-